Okay, shalom aleichem.
Alaikum shalom.
Okay, assalamu alaikum. Oh, let me do that again. I wasn't recording, so shalom alaikum. There we go. Take two. No, it's already. Yeah, I'm just showing how rubbish I am because I don't edit anything, so it's embarrassing me how. Anyway, so the introduction is, if people don't know my friend, what's your name actually? I forget.
Joseph Cohen. You can find me on the Israel Advocacy Movement. You can find us on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
All over YouTube, very famous. Essentially a Zionist is the short version we're going to give.
Jewish Zionist, yeah.
Jewish Zionist, okay. And what I want to talk about, as a Muslim who wants good for everybody, that's what I really care about. And I have an idea. I was brought up, my idea of Islam is love for all and hatred for none. That's what my group of Muslims are known as internationally, and we've got very good relationships with the Jews in Israel, right? And so I want essentially an easy way to beat Zionism. And I hope you agree with it. Whether it works or not, you agree with the methodology, I hope. And there's a few other things I want to talk about, which is, first of all, how Muslims should speak to you or anybody according to the teaching of the Quran. I'll just read out the verse. And the servants of the gracious God are those who walk on earth modestly, and when the ignorant address them, they say peace or shalom. Okay, basically, if I disagree with you, my first reaction is peace. I wish you well, whatever your situation. And also, the word salam, peace, is also like a way of, like we just did right now. It's like a hello and a goodbye. So we could say goodbye if we don't want, but there's no excuse to be rude. We're supposed to be servants of the gracious God, meaning we are here to give as much as we can to the world.
Yeah.
Any thoughts?
So Judaism is very, very similar. Almost everything you said is echoed in the Jewish tradition. So that we'll have no disagreement there. I think the one thing which is interesting before we jump into your opening question is maybe definitionally, what do you believe a Zionist is?
So I kind of want to avoid that.
It's just
but no, we'll talk.
Title
No, I know.
For me to abandon Zionism, so I think first I need to know what I'm.
No, I'm not even going to ask you to abandon it.
Well, what was it you said?
Beat Zionism.
Okay,
so basically, I'm going to suggest a way that people can live in harmony and let the results do whatever they are.
Perfect. I do think it's important to define.
But I'll define it roughly, and the only reason why, just so you know, the reason why I want to avoid it is because I want to avoid overly technical discussion, but also there are people who just want to pick a fight with me and yourself, and I want to make it short. So the short version is, my understanding of Zionism, the bit that I disagree with, is just that people have a right to a land or a property because of historical reasons.
Okay, I that's fair.
That's my only problem with it. I'm happy, and actually a lot of Arabs are very happy originally for so many Jews to come to the land. There are photographs of Jews coming to the land in, I think, 1948, and Arabs welcoming them.
It's probably best to avoid the history, because I think you'll be... It's not through any fault of your own, but there'll be big holes. Like, already what you've said there isn't correct. Okay. And I don't want it to turn into a debate, because I don't think it's the purpose of this conversation. Okay. But yeah, I think definitionally a Zionist is simply anyone who supports the right of the Jewish people to have a state in their ancestral homeland. So the continued support of the existence of the state of Israel. So that is definitionally a Zionist. You can support a Palestinian state, you can support any other state in the world, but as long as you support Israel's right to exist as a Jewish state, then you're definitionally a Zionist.
Sure, and I'm not exactly against that. If Palestinians agree to that, like sharing the land separately, whatever, or living together, whatever. And I prefer the living together way, so it's quicker and easier. Right, but anyway, so next thing is the Palestinian fight is not jihad, okay, as it's not religious, because there are Christian Palestinians as well, and it's not unified, it involves children, and they haven't won, okay. So let me explain that through the verse of the Holy Quran. I will put them, I'll send you the quotes as well, but I'll put them in my comments, whatever. Those who have been driven out from their homes, this is quoting from the Holy Quran, unjustly only because they said our Lord is Allah, and if they did not repel some people by means of others, they would surely have destroyed cloisters and churches and synagogues. So by the way, this verse of the Holy Quran is saying you can be a martyr if you protect a synagogue and die protecting a synagogue, right? Okay, and mosque where in the name of God Allah is often commemorated, and Allah will surely help one who helps him. Allah is indeed powerful, mighty. So there's a number of messages there. It's got to be about people being stopped from worshipping, which they're not. Another thing is that God will help them win even if they're weak. So if it was jihad, they would have won already. And then the fact that you should only fight people who are... there's another verse of the Holy Quran that says, and fight in the cause of Allah against who fight against you. So there shouldn't be children who are getting in the middle of this war who are not being fought against directly. So things like that. These are generally accepted ideas of jihad, but they're not being applied in the Palestinian situation. And I'm going to offer a much better alternative to Palestinians who I care for, and I don't want them to die. I don't want anybody to die. Any thoughts on that first?
I want to avoid getting into details, but I don't think it's my place to say what is or isn't jihad. I would say that jihad has been the rallying call of the Arabs and the Palestinians in this conflict since basically the beginning. Hajimin al-Husseini, who is the leader of the Palestinians in the 30s and 40s, famously said, "Oh Muslims, I declare a jihad, slaughter the Jews, slaughter them all." The king of Jordan, who was he was a religious Muslim, but he wasn't a fundamentalist by any stretch. He used jihad as the pretense to rally the Arab armies against the Jewish people. So it's not my place to say what is or isn't jihad. So if you're saying that it isn't jihad, I don't think as an Orthodox Jew it's my place to say that you're right and they're wrong. That's, I'd say, an internal discussion for the Muslim community.
Sure, if anybody wants to discuss what jihad is, look at the verse of the Holy Quran. We can discuss based on that, not based on a political leader who might be using it. But anyway, and so what's the solution? Palestinians should move to Israel from Palestine, the lands that are called Palestine, move to Israel, okay, as God will make the world plentiful for them. Okay, move to Israel or move to further abroad to Jordan or wherever they want, right? Okay, God will help them. They should not think that one tiny house that they're dependent on. I know it might be ancestral and they might have a personal connection to it. Maybe sell it at a good price. This is what I genuinely want for these people. For everybody, right? Less war, less pain, less suffering. Okay, I do not want another child dead on any side. Okay, and so let me just quote from the Holy Quran: "And whoso migrates from his country in the cause of Allah." So I'm not saying they might be persecuted from. They might see themselves being persecuted by the Jews, or their lives made difficult. But if their intention is to live a better life abroad, and then they can maybe, I don't know, preach Islam or whatever they think is something in the cause of God, then it is a cause of God. Because in Islam, it's all your intentions that justify any actions you do.
So I want to make sure I understand what you're saying. Yeah. So you've got a Palestinian today living in Jenin, in the West Bank, living under the Palestinian Authority. What are you saying that he should do?
So if they feel persecuted, I'm telling them move to another part of the area considered maybe Israel, if that helps. If they feel safer, they should move that. So I know many people, okay, friends who live in the Israeli part of, that part, whatever is considered Israel. They live very peacefully, in harmony, they run businesses, they're doing well. Yeah. Okay, apparently, I don't know, you probably know numbers better than are there 1 million, 2 million?
There's 2 million Arabs that live in Israel. They have full citizenship, they have complete equality with Israeli Jews, to the extent that Arab judges have sent Jewish prime ministers and Jewish presidents to jail amongst the religious community. So you got someone calling. Do you want to...
No, just hang up. Yeah. Hopefully, it hasn't ruined the recording. But anyway,
so you've got whereas in terms of religion, the highest performing religious group in Israel are actually Christian Arabs. They outperform religious Jews. So there are 2 million Arabs living in Israel today. I think one thing that you will meet a lot of resistance in terms of your proposal is if you were suddenly to open the borders of Israel to anyone who claims Palestinian descent. And the reason I think it's important to frame it that way is, according to the United Nations Relief Work Agency, a Palestinian refugee, who would be the people who have the right to return, is anybody who has at least one Jewish ancestor on their father's side, so paternally, patrilineally, that was lived in British Mandatory Palestine between the years 1946 and 1948. So I'm not going just because I think it's important. Yeah. If you were an Iraqi Arab or a Lebanese Arab who came to Mandatory Palestine to work for a couple of years, the United Nations Relief Work Agency would consider you a Palestinian. And so you have millions and millions and millions of people. So I'm not telling them to be refugees necessarily. Okay, you've got millions of these people, and what you're basically saying is these millions of people can move to Israel, and the Jews will once again be a minority in a Muslim land. And we've lived under Islam, we've lived under Christendom, and we haven't fared well. We've been persecuted in almost every country we've lived that was controlled by Christians or Muslims. And to that point, I'm not even considering that. I'm not talking about that. Okay, I'm trying to make it really simple. So all I'm going to suggest is that if Muslims behave like Muslims, I believe that the Muslim way of life is really helpful to the individual, and they'll make them really useful to society, so they even be welcomed, maybe as doctors or anything else, other professions in Israel, as useful members of that society, and then they will eventually overtake by being welcome eventually. Okay, but you don't have to agree with that. That's my point. But the whole purpose of a Jewish state... No, it may be by agreement by the Jews. So as soon as you say there's too many Muslims and we don't want all these Muslim doctors or useful people, then I just because I want to keep it simple, those people can go to another place, go to Jordan, go to elsewhere. I think that the nature of the place, the dynamics of society will eventually work in the favor of Muslims who behave like Muslims in a peaceful way. Don't have fights. This is what I'm telling to Muslims. Don't engage in fights. Do something more productive with your life. I know it's very harmful. I definitely can't understand some of the devastation people might have. I've had my own share of suffering, but that's another story, right? Okay, it's not that I'm unaware of suffering, but what I mean to say is, do something that's better for your children and your families. Move abroad if you have to. It will work out for you, because I didn't complete the verse of the Holy Quran. And whoso migrates from his country in the cause of Allah, that is God, we'll find in earth an abundant place of refuge and plentifulness. So that's just my suggestion. Is there anything based on what I said that you are uncomfortable with? Yes, but I have to go to history to explain my position. I kind of want to. Okay, I mean, you asked me for a conversation, but you're trying to steer it to an answer. Yeah, because I have a bias towards short videos, which is not great. But it's just like okay, then in short, no. Okay, so you have no problem with. No, I have a problem. I don't support. Okay, go on then. Go on then. Okay, in 1948, the Palestinians had the opportunity. The Muslim Palestinians had the opportunity at statehood, and they rejected statehood. And 5 Arab armies invaded Israel, and since then Israel has been locked in a war. If in 1948 the Arabs had said, yes, we agree to a two-state solution, a Palestinian state alongside an Israeli state, there wouldn't be one refugee, you'd have 2 states that were prospering side by side. The solution is not on Israel, the solution is on the Palestinians to abandon the path of war, which you've said potentially described as jihad, which I would agree, 100% abandon the path of jihad and focus on building up your own nation. Like they've got all the means to create an incredibly prosperous state in that region. When I visit the area, I drive through Ramallah and I see affluence like people wouldn't believe. There is money amongst the Palestinians, maybe not the guy on the street, but there is lots of money flowing into the land, and it's been squandered on corruption or in Gaza's case on conflict. If they abandon this path, let's call it jihad, this path of jihad, and instead focused on nation building and peace, we'd have coexistence. Now you can put a veneer of religion around that. You can paint it in religious terms, but it's fundamentally not about Israel allowing people into its territory. It's about, because all that will happen then is the conflict will switch to an internal civil war, which was what was previously.
I'm saying it's just like England. It's the same. If England decides that they want people from, let's say, outside, right? Even though I don't necessarily call it Palestinian particularly outside, but if they,
I don't think there's an appetite for that from Israelis. So it's a fantasy. Israelis want a Jewish Israelis want a Jewish state, sure, because we've been persecuted.
Okay, fine.
When we lived.
So let's go to Plan B. Let's just say Plan B. So although there are already many Muslim Arabs, Christian Arabs, whatever, who live in the state of Israel, okay, and let's say there's a degree, they reach a level of saturation and the Jews say, no thank you anymore, no more, right? Yeah. Fine, no problem. Move elsewhere, and I think the dynamics of society, if you're good people, good Muslims, you will win overall. That's that's my message. And when I say win for the benefit of all of humanity, living in peace.
I think I disagree with that. It puts the emphasis on the Jews, and the Jews have made so many peace proposals which have been rejected. The solution is I'll be really clear. The solution is not for the Jews to do something. The solution is for a mindset change amongst the Palestinians, where they abandon the idea of destroying Israel.
I mean, did you see that all my solution was for Muslims to what they should do? And then the Jews can do whatever they want to.
It involved Palestinians moving into Israeli.
No, it doesn't have to be.
In that case,
so they can move anywhere. I said that if you get to a point of saturation where you're not happy with it,
maybe we're agreeing. Yeah. I'm saying the emphasis is on the Palestinians. I think.
Did you note? I put 100% all the emphasis on the Muslims.
Okay.
You know, not telling other people what to do. Because I think God will always help people, and I think, it's not really, when I say win against, it's just simple wording. It's like, I want everybody to win.
So, if by win you mean to live in peace, same.
Exactly. Cool.
Inshallah.
Inshallah. Thank you very much. Salam. You're welcome.